Welcome back to another episode of the Just As We Are podcast. I'm your host, Katrina Lully, and I am just over the freaking moon excited about this episode, you guys. I got to sit down with my new friend, Kathie Vandermeer, who is a mom of two littles, a top fitness trainer, lifestyle strategist, podcast host, and founder of Tight and Toned. Her postpartum depression battles after each baby were so dark and scary, as well as very different. And after having her second child, Kathie found herself in a place she never thought she would be: suicidal. She was recently voted the world's top trainer by Women's Fitness magazine. It is her mission to share her story, help women get fit, regain their confidence, and step into the lives they were meant to live, all without wasting hours in the gym. And for Kathie, it wasn't always this way, you guys. We go into such an in-depth conversation around postpartum depression, and she gets really open and vulnerable about her suicide thoughts, and we relate on that. And I have not yet had a guest get so deep and personal as Kathie did. I loved this conversation. You know, we talk also about how do you start your day, or having a morning routine, or even a night routine. She introduces a night routine, which I absolutely love, and the importance of being in gratitude and having that be a part of everyday life. We just get real and raw and so vulnerable with you guys. You're going to want to be in a space where you can really just be with this episode and be grounded in it and really listen to her message of hope, and her story just will shake you to the core in a beautiful, uplifting way. This conversation is absolutely one of my favorites, and I can't wait for you guys to listen. Welcome to the Just As We Are podcast. I'm Katrina Lully, certified life coach, aspiring author, lover of people, mama in recovery, and student of life. Each week, I will bring you love, inspiration, the real life stuff people are afraid to talk about, and guests who are willing to shine their light for you. I give you self-care practices and mindset tips to help you shatter the negative stories you tell yourself. Now is the time to step into the beautiful, loved, whole woman you already are. Let's walk this journey together. Hello and welcome back to the Just As We Are podcast. I'm your host, Katrina Lully, and I am just so grateful to be here this morning. Thank you for tuning into another episode. I have such a beautiful guest this morning. I'm super excited about talking with her and hearing her story. I had the opportunity of being on her podcast a few weeks back. And so if you haven't listened to that episode, we'll share about her podcast, where you can find it. So go listen to her podcast. But I want you guys to welcome Kathie Vandermeer.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here, and just grateful to be able to switch the table around and be on your podcast now.
Right? Yeah, it's so much fun being able to sit down with all of you women and mamas that I met at Mommy Millionaire Live, and that I've met through the community, and get to hear one another's stories and really get to know one another. It's just been so powerful since that experience, and having these conversations with women, you know, getting really to share our stories. And we've talked about like how important sharing our stories is, and how it just like breaks down such a huge wall.
Yeah, it totally does. And I feel like when you meet new people, and I mean, on my podcast, we talked about how like we're not like small talk people. Like, we're not going to talk about the weather. Like, we want to get right down to, you know, why you were suicidal, or what your daddy issues are, or whatever it may be. But you realize after talking, you know, being in like a group like that and talking to different people, that everybody has their own stuff that they have gone through. It may not be the same as you, but everybody has their own, traumas and like life altering events that they have gone through. And it's really kind of comforting to know that you're not alone in whatever struggle you're going through. And you are, if you look for it, you are surrounded by so much support.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And it is true. We all have different experiences, but there's these common thoughts and feelings that we go through that we can all relate to. And when we open up and start talking about those things, it just lifts that wall up. It can bring such a breath of fresh air to your life. And just knowing that you're not alone in that. And then, that brings that hope that there's a solution, that there's a light that's coming my way, or there's a way to, that it won't always be this way. That if this person experienced this and she's gone through it, and look at her now, she's succeeded, she's happy, she's got joy in her life. The same can happen for you too, or for me too.
Totally. I think it's really, like, I've talked to so many women, and I mean, just talking to you at the event, like, you're this beautiful woman who, like, just oozes confidence. And then talking to you, I'm like, oh my gosh, like, you have such a story behind you. And to hear what you had to say, and it's like, okay, if you can overcome that, then I can overcome what I'm going through, and the same for other people. It's really such a powerful, like, uplifting thing.
Absolutely. And what came to mind when you said that too is, you know, we both have different experiences, and we go through different things. And the important thing here is, and I've done this in my life, I don't know if you've done this, when going through and thinking in those moments of darkness, like, I'm the only one. And if you hear somebody else's story going into comparison mode, well, see, their story is worse than mine because this happened. And I want to just point out that it is so important that each story has its, I don't know, for lack of a better word, credibility, or I wouldn't say value, but it doesn't matter. It's all the same. It doesn't matter if you think somebody's been through worse. Your story is just as powerful, just as important as the other woman.
Totally. And I think with each story comes a learning experience too. Like, I always tell my clients, like, life isn't meant to be easy. Like, think about how boring life would be if we just, like, coasted by. Like, if everything was just kind of like mediocre, it wasn't great, but we didn't really have any bad days. Like, it was just kind of like we would just coast, and it would just remain the same forever. And I feel like that would be so boring. Like, I look back on, my postpartum struggles and the struggles I've had after. I mean, I don't know if postpartum depression really will ever go away. Like, I still, 2.5 years later after my last baby, like, I still have my up and down days, I'll be honest. Um, but with all of that comes new experiences and, like, life lessons from that. And I take that and figure out, like, how can I learn from this, and how can I be better from this? So if those didn't happen, what would life be like? It would be so boring, and there would be nothing to learn from. And I honestly don't think that I would be where I am right now if none of that had happened.
Oh yeah, 100% agree. Every step we take gets us to right where we're at. And so for me, there's no point in living in regret, because each step was purposeful while it didn't seem like it at the time. And most of the time it's, I don't want to be here. I don't want to take this step, but it's for a purpose, and it's to be right where we are right now, even as little as, I think, sitting down and having this conversation, but dive in. Tell us a little bit more about who you are, and, just go ahead and share your story with us.
Yeah. So, I'm Kathie, obviously. I have two kids who are currently 2 and 4. Their birthdays are 3 days apart, 2 years apart. My daughter's 4 and my son is 2, and he's the firecracker in my life. He keeps me on my toes. I'm a fitness trainer who was recently, back in the summer, voted one of the world's best online trainers by Women's Health magazine. So that is super like amazing. And so it's such an honor for me. When I was going through my struggles, which I'll talk about, I never ever thought that I would have, some sort of recognition or title like that to my name. I really didn't have any like self-worth. And yeah, I have a podcast called Life Camp Podcast, where I pretty much talk about all things health and fitness, mindset, a little bit of business, but it's really just teaching women, bringing them tips and just a ton of value for them to put into action into their lives every day, and just really help them step into that higher self, that version of themselves that they envision, but they don't really know how to get there. It's giving them tips on how to get there. And then I am also the creator of a online fitness program called Titan Toned. And that program is like my baby, my pride and joy. It was created out of a need when I was actually in a really dark place myself. And it's the only live online fitness program out there. My clients get to work out live with me, real time, from the comfort of their own home. So it's just over a year old, and it's really taking off. And I love that program so much. And we have such an amazing community that we have created in there. Yeah, and like you said, I struggled with postpartum depression after both of my kids. And they were both scary. The first time was scary in the sense that I didn't really know what was going on. I never had any thoughts of harming myself or my baby. I just wanted to run away. Like, I didn't want to be a mom. I was very overwhelmed. I felt like I was failing. We had a very traumatic birth and a really long labor. I was in labor with her for 43 hours.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. And I pushed for an hour and a half, and then they're like, oh, she's stuck. She's not coming out. So I had an emergency C-section, but they think because I was in labor for so long that she like tried to breathe before she was actually out. And once she came out, she took such a big first breath that it punctured both of her lungs. And so she ended up in the NICU, but the hospital that I delivered in was not equipped to deal with babies like her. They were more equipped to just deal with like monitoring. And because both her lungs collapsed, she needed a bit more help. So they actually transferred her to a hospital 5 hours after she was born. I got to see her for like 30 minutes. They wheeled her into my room quickly before they transferred her. And my husband went with her. So after giving birth, I spent 30 minutes with my newborn, and then we spent 26 hours apart.
Wow.
So yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Any mom knows that those first 24 hours are critical for bonding with your baby. So I really think like the fact that we spent that much time apart, plus the lung issues that she had, kind of contributed to the depression, to my anxiety. I mean, when we took her home a week later, thank God it was only a week that she was in the NICU. I was afraid that she was going to die. Like, I was afraid that her lungs hadn't fully healed, that she, was going to die. And so it just kind of kept snowballing. I had this anxiety around what had happened. And then I feel it just kept going and going. And depression isn't something that you can control. It's a chemical imbalance in your brain. It's nobody's fault. It's never, if there's somebody listening going through it, know that it's not your fault. You have no control over it. And so my husband kind of noticed all these red flags. I was getting anxious, and I would go from like 0 to 100 in like no time at all. Like, I would just see red. I wasn't myself. And so he's the one with our first that actually said, like, I think you might have like some postpartum depression. And I was like, no, I don't. Like, I just lost it. And he was like, my point exactly. And so he made a doctor's appointment for me because I was not in the right mind I wouldn't say I was in denial, but I think I was in so deep that I couldn't recognize the signs. And so he made me a doctor's appointment. He took me. And my doctor, asked me a bunch of questions. Do you feel like a failure? Yes. Do you have any thoughts of harming yourself or your baby? No, but I want to run away and leave the baby. I want to take my husband with me because I love him, but I don't want to be a mom. Okay. And just a bunch of other questions. And he was like, I think you have postpartum depression. Here's what we can do. Here's what I think you should do. And right then and there, I started an antidepressant. And I feel like nowadays, everybody's trying to be holistic. Everybody's trying to be all natural, not put all these pills and whatever in your body. But postpartum depression statistically does not get better on its own. You need to have an intervention to get better. It's a chemical imbalance. So I was like, I'm not going to mess around with this, because if I want to run away now, like 2 months into being a mom, not even, I think it was like 7 weeks, like, where is this going to go? It's going to get worse probably. And so I started an antidepressant, and then we made a game plan from there. I got, the help that I needed to be able to get a clear mind and make a game plan. I feel like when you start something like that, it shouldn't be like the end all. Like, it's not gonna fix everything. You have to be able to work towards, making yourself better. But I feel like it's starting something like that, if you really need it, is a good starting point. And so that was fine. I went to work on myself. It was really, I had been in fitness before I had kids and before I got pregnant. But that is really kind of where my passion for fitness came. It's kind of where I found like the true, like the power of dedicating, time to yourself every day. Because working out releases endorphins, and endorphins make you feel good. Even if you don't feel, like moving your body, you feel like crap, you're exhausted. Just getting, a walk in or anything can release those endorphins and really make you feel better and kind of clear your mind. And so now fitness is like, if I'm having a bad day, I'll go for a run, or I'll go for a walk, or I'll just even go and like do a stretch, and it like clears my mind. But going back, so I went to work on myself. That's where my passion started really for fitness. And I really discovered like the power of it. And then when my daughter was 14 months, I got pregnant again. And so I went off my medication. I was still on it. I went off of it because I was pregnant, and the one that I was on, they don't recommend using while you're pregnant. And so I went off of it. Everything was fine. I had a great pregnancy in the terms of being pregnant for a second time. I mean, anybody who has multiple kids knows it's harder the second time in a different sense, because, you have a child to look after already. And so you're exhausted. You can't really, come home from work and nap like you used to, or whatever. Great pregnancy. We had scheduled a C-section because of everything that had happened before. I was like, I want to be in as much control as possible the second time around. And this little guy came and showed me that I have zero control. My due date was September 17th. I had my C-section scheduled for September 11th. He was born September 1st.
Wow.
So the morning I went into labor, it's funny because I had my OB appointment the day before, and I was like, this kid is not going to last till the 11th. Like, I'm so uncomfortable. I feel like he's just going to like fall out at any second. My Braxton Hicks are like painful. And she's like, well, if it happens, it happens. But second baby probably won't be, whatever. And I was like, okay. So my daughter had hand, foot, and mouth.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it was a gong show. And I remember so vividly, she was in bed with me because when she's sick, she gets like crazy high fevers. And she was in bed with me. It was 8 a.m. We were still sleeping. I rolled over and I felt a pop and my water broke. And I was like, oh no.
Oh gosh.
Yeah. So we went to the hospital and they did whatever they needed to. And that was at like 8 a.m. We were at the hospital by 9, and by 3 he was born. And the ironic thing is I wanted to have a C-section to avoid having another NICU baby. And he ended up in the NICU just for 24 hours. He took in too much fluid in his lungs, and so he was having a hard time clearing them. So they wanted to just monitor and make sure it didn't turn into pneumonia, whatever. He was fine. He was such an easy baby. Like, never cried. Like, he was that baby. I would put him on the couch and forget he was there. He would just like fall asleep. He was just such a content little guy. And so I was like, I'm out of the woods, like 3-4 months in. I was like, yes, no postpartum depression. I was in constant contact with my midwives, with my doctors. Like, we had this plan. I had my placenta encapsulated. I literally did everything possible to avoid it. But the more kids you have, the higher risk you are of it returning if you have a history of it. And so it was around Christmas, New Year's, I would say, like, I felt like the anxiety creeping up. And anxiety for me, the first red flag for me is like sweat. Like, I'll just start sweating all of a sudden. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, like, I'm freaked out for whatever reason. And it was like, it would be at bedtime. Like, I don't know why bedtime was a trigger for me, but I would come out from putting him to bed and I would just be like soaked in like nervous sweat. And then we were supposed to have a New Year's party. And I was like, I can't do this. Like, I can't have people over. I'm a social person. We love to host parties. Couldn't do it. We actually had an ice storm here and we had no power for 3 days. And I was like, thank you, God. Like, we have no power. We can't have a New Year's party. Like, this is my out. Like, he has my back. He is safe. And so it kind of just kept going. And honestly, like, I kind of had like an ego about it. Like, no, like, your baby's, like, it just kept going. Like, your baby's older. You've beat this. You've done everything possible to avoid it. Like, smarten up. And so I just kept pushing it down. And then one day, Mason was about seven or 8 months. And I went grocery shopping. I was by myself. And I literally was driving and I had this thought come over me. Just like out of nowhere. It was just like downloaded into my brain. Like, I was just minding my own business and it just kind of popped in. And it was like, if I died, like if I drove into oncoming traffic, into a bridge, off a cliff, whatever it may be, nobody would even notice. And like, my heart stopped. And I was like, oh no, that is not normal. And so I come home. I didn't say anything to my husband or my parents. Like, I didn't want to freak anybody out. But I knew right then and there that I needed to do something like yesterday. Like, this has gotten to the point I can't ignore it anymore. Like, if I'm having these thoughts, like, what is next? Like, I'll probably act on it. And so I went to my doctor and I was like, this is what's happening. Like, nobody knows. Like, I need help, like, ASAP. And so I went back on an antidepressant. And it took a while to kind of get back into it. And I sat my husband down. I'm like, this is what's been going on. Like, nobody knows. My mom doesn't know. Like, I didn't want to freak anybody out. Like, I knew what I had to do, and it's done now, but like, I need your help and your support and your like understanding. And he was like, I've got your back. So, um, that was like a really like scary and like humbling experience. And it really made me think like, I don't have any control over like what if my depression comes back or not. Like, I had zero history of anxiety or depression before I had kids. Like, none. And it's changed me. They've changed me. I mean, I love them dearly, but it's created this like I don't want to call it a struggle anymore, but it's created this thing that I now have in my life that I don't know if it will ever completely go away. There are days where it's hard to get out of bed, but I've done so much work that I know how to combat it. And if I don't put in the work, then it gets worse. And granted, these thoughts don't come up anymore. You know, if I was to not be on earth anymore, nobody would care. Like, I know that, I feel like that part came from a low self-worth. Like, I wasn't happy with my body. I wasn't really doing anything for myself. And so I didn't really like honor myself. I didn't feel good about myself. And I was like, nobody really cares. Like, I don't care about myself right now. Like, nobody else is going to care about me. And so I've put in the work, and I now know what to do when those come up. Like, I know, and I can always tell if I haven't, done my gratitude or whatever it may be, I know how it affects my body. That I find that is when I have the harder days.
That is just, I am over here almost in tears, and my heart is just beating so fast because you told some of my story.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes me back to those moments where I've felt like I could drive my car off the road right now and nobody would know. Nobody would care.
Nobody would care.
And it's almost, I don't know if this is true for you, but it almost feels like an out-of-body experience in a way.
Yeah, it does.
Like, you are not in control. There is this weird voice going on in your head, mm-hmm. and you're just the passenger, and shit just got real.
Yeah. Yeah. It was like, where did this come from? Like, it was like somebody was sitting in my car, like telling me this.
Yeah.
Like, it was the weirdest thing.
Yeah. I can't tell you how, like, I don't know, freeing it is to hear that story, because when I had a rope around my neck, I took my dog for a walk, mm-hmm. and the same thoughts came into my head, and it was exactly that feeling. And I'd never heard anybody else speak about it that way. Like, I couldn't explain it to other people. I felt a little crazy. Like, mm-hmm. It was an out of body experience. Somebody was telling me to go do this, mm-hmm. And it was the strangest thought. And it's like, wow, to hear somebody else share it in that way.
Yeah.
It's so powerful. And I want to tell you, I'm so proud of you for not, 8 months in, you're thinking like, oh, I've got this. Everything's mm-hmm. going to be okay. And then these thoughts come up, and, instead of continuing to push down the feeling or cover it up in a different way, which many, many people do, you went and noticed right away, okay, I need help. And you reached out for that.
Yeah, because honestly, it was like, okay, I've pushed it down for so long. It's gotten to this point. Like, I don't trust myself. If I'm having these thoughts and I had no control over it, and I felt like it was somebody else telling me this, what could happen if I was alone with my kids and that happened again? Like, honestly, it was like, I'm afraid. Like, trust what just happened and trust myself to be alone with my kids. Like, who knows? Who knows what could have happened? And so I think because I had gone through, this is why I always say, like, I'd gone through something similar with my daughter, but it was also very different because this part of it never happened with my daughter. But the anxiety and the anger and the everything else was the same. Like, I think because I'd gone through that part before and I'd seen that I could get better, I could see how powerful, going on an antidepressant and doing all this work was, that I knew that it didn't have to end like this.
It's just, I'm almost speechless because it's just so powerful. And this is the kind of stuff that we need to talk more about,
Yeah.
that we need to get out there and share because it is so real. And you're right. What could have happened if you were with your kids and something happened?
Yeah.
You
I
know?
mean, my husband travels 50% of every month. Like, that's a lot of time to be alone with my kids. And if I'm not in the right frame of mind, like, who knows? Like, it breaks my heart to think about that, but it's the truth. Like, it was not, I was gone. I was long gone and I needed to get help. And it really, like, you're right. Like, when you explain it to somebody who hasn't gone through that, they don't get it. Like, I always think about, I look back on like Robin Williams or, any of these like celebrities or whatever who've committed suicide, and people are like, I don't understand how you could do that. It's like, I can.
Yeah.
It's not, you're not in the right frame of mind, and it's like somebody else takes over your body.
Yeah. It absolutely is. It's one of the strangest things in the world that I've ever experienced myself. And immediately went and got help after that as well.
Mhm.
And that's the important thing is to say something, go do something about it because there is help. Did you ever come, or even maybe even now, do you ever have those thoughts of like, I just want to be fixed. I feel so broken that this is not going to be different ever.
Like now?
Well, even then, at
Yeah.
any time during the journey.
Yes. And even still, I mean, I don't really have the, like, I want to be fixed. I'm broken. Like, I know I'm not broken. And I think it's because I've been so open about my story, and I've received so many positive messages back from people who have gone through the same things. I look at it now as my story, my struggles happen so I can help other people.
Mhm.
Um, so I don't look at it as that way, but I do still have my days where I'm like, "Ah, really? Like, I'm tired of fighting. Like, I'm tired of, having to do like the extra work some days, and I just don't feel like it." Um, and that's when I know that I have to do like twice the amount of work. But I always look back with like a grateful heart. Like I said, life wasn't meant to be boring. My life certainly is not boring. Uh, um, but I think just it's really important. It doesn't matter who you are, whether you have a podcast or not, or you've been in a magazine or whatnot, or you're just like the girl next door. I think it's really important to be open and honest about your struggles and your stories, because you never know who you're going to come across and inspire. I mean, the first time I was really open and honest about my struggle was I went live on Instagram. Um, and there's a cell phone company here called Bell Mobility. I'm in Canada. And so they have a day called Bell Let's Talk, and it's dedicated to mental health. And so all of these people that I know and follow, and these such strong women were like coming forward and sharing their stories about different mental health issues. And I was like, this is my time to like get it off my chest. And so I went live, and like I just did it. And I was like, this is my story. You know, I was honest before about my postpartum depression, about my struggles, but never the whole story. And that kind of is what started for me. Like, it was instantly like I had this weight lifted off my shoulders. Like, I felt like I was kind of living this, like, I had this like front on for so long, and I was so afraid that if I actually came forward with my whole story, that people would be like, that's the weird one that like thought about like killing herself. Um, but I had so many stories, so many messages of women like, thank you for sharing your story. Like, I've had this happen to me. I felt the same. Or, you know, I feel like I had postpartum depression and I never got help. Like, I didn't know that's what it was. And one woman was like, I went through almost the exact same thing. And like, I wanted to die and you saved my life, Kathie. And I was like, oh my gosh, like that just hit me like a ton of bricks. I was like, if I didn't share my story, like, would she still be here? And so I was like, that right then and there, I was like, I'm not broken. Like, this is my purpose. My struggles are so I can help other women. And so it's such a powerful thing. And that's what I use when I have my days where it's usually when my husband's away, because, you know, I'm running a full-time business here with 2 kids at home. Like, my kids aren't old enough to be in school full time. My daughter's 4. She's in preschool 3 days a week for like 2.5 hours. My son's 2. So it's easy to get overwhelmed. And when I get overwhelmed, that's, I find, when I get like anxiety and like, I can't do this.
Yeah.
And so I just go back to that. Like, you're here for a reason. Like, think about all these women you have helped and how many women are like waiting to hear your story. So
Yeah. Oh, tell me a little bit more about how you take care of yourself, how you support yourself, and like how do you start your day? Like the practical things that you do to help you stay more, for lack of spiritually fit, so that
yeah.
you're hopefully not, you don't go into those places so much.
So everybody talks about how important it is to have a morning routine. I don't have a morning routine.
Oh, thank you. I don't either. I just go with the flow.
Right? Because my kids' sleep schedule is so all over the place. Like, I want to be a 5 a.m. person. I want to be part of that club is so bad.
Yes.
And I know it will happen, but right now it's not practical. And so why would I beat myself up about, you know, trying to get up at 5 a.m. and my son's up at 5:30? Like, that would just throw me into a tailspin. Like, that, I couldn't handle that. And so, because I'm such a routine person. And so what I have learned are my kids' patterns. When are they content and the most calm? That is when I do the work for me. So I get up when my kids get up. I know people say don't do that. Like, start out, you know, with at least 30 minutes for yourself. But I'm like the real talk. Like, I told you before you hit record, like, I'm an open book. Like, I don't have a morning schedule. I get up when my kids get up. If that's 8 o'clock sometimes, and so be it. I need my sleep. But I've learned, like I said, my kids' schedules, you know, when they're content and stuff. So that's when I do my meditations and my gratitude. But the biggest thing for me is I need to move my body for 30 minutes every day. That is when I'm the most creative for my business. That is when I'm the most grateful that I'm able to move my body, that I can do it from my house. I don't have to go to the gym. And that's kind of what my brand and my business has been built around. Like, you don't have to leave your house to get in a good workout. And you don't need to waste hours in the gym. And so scheduling in those 30 minutes. I mean, I go live with my Tight Toned members 3 days a week. And so that's scheduled into my work, into my schedule, so I don't ever miss it. And then I've learned over, a period of time that I need to schedule like everything in. Like if you look at my Outlook calendar now, it is like so overwhelming because there's like, 30 minutes of spin in there, 30 minutes of like stretching. Everything's color coded. It's got, but that works for me. If I don't schedule it in, it's not going to happen. And that's what I tell, my listeners and I'm going to tell your listeners and my clients and membership members is schedule in time for yourself every day. Figure out what makes you feel good. It's going to be different for everybody. I know, you hear all these people say like meditate and do gratitude journals and whatever and affirmations and whatever it may be. But if you're uncomfortable with that, then don't do it right now. Find something that you're comfortable with and that you can commit to every day and start with like 10 minutes. But schedule it in. Like you wouldn't miss a nail appointment, a hair appointment, probably not even a dentist appointment, even though we don't like going to the dentist, most of us. So don't miss an appointment with yourself. Like you missing, a hair or nail or whatever appointment shows that you're not a trustworthy person. So if you make an appointment with yourself, what are you showing your brain and showing, your subconscious mind and yourself? Like if you just skip that, if you say you're going to do something and you don't do it, you're showing yourself that you're not trustworthy. And so moving forward into different things, when you go to do something that you want to do, your mind and your subconscious is going to be like, don't do that. Like you're not trustworthy. So start out, you want to build that trust with yourself no matter what you're doing. And that's where that confidence is going to come. And that's where you're eventually going to be able to like lean into different fears and be like, you know what? I am a confident, strong, trustworthy person. Like I can do this. I've got this. But you have to start small. So figure out what it is for you that makes you happy, that makes you have that clear mind, that, releases negative energy and lets you bring in that positive energy. For me, running is a huge release for me. So, yeah, just figure something out that you enjoy doing. Actually, my doctor made me write down a list of 50 things. That was really hard to do. 50 things that brought me joy, and I had to do 3 of them every day. And with my one-on-one coaching clients, that's one of the first things I actually make them do is come up with 50 things. And it can be anything. It can be like, foam rolling or getting your nails done or like reading a book or like anything. So now going back to, what I do, like I said, I make sure that I schedule in 30 minutes of something for me to do every day. And for me, it's always moving my body. I always feel best when I move my body. So I do my 3 workouts with my program members. And then I have like a spin bike here. So I do, like 20 minutes of spin or whatever. I'm not a cardio bunny, but I enjoy, like 20 minutes or whatever. I stretch. My husband and I meditate at night after the kids go to bed because going back to that morning routine, it just doesn't happen. And I know that meditation for me makes me feel good. It makes me sit and really like just be in the moment. As parents, as moms, I feel like we're 90% of the time, we're always, like chasing kids around, trying to put out different fires, trying to break up fights between siblings. I'm trying to like protect my daughter from like a flying book that my son has whipped at her. So at the end of the night, when all is calm and they're in bed, that's when my husband and I sit together and we meditate. And it's such a powerful thing to be just like still and quiet together. And I feel like it's made us stronger as a couple because we're more in tune with ourselves. And there'll be some meditations that we do where like he won't enjoy. We just use like the Headspace app.
Yeah, I just downloaded that app. I love it.
It's the best. The basic ones are my favorite.
Yeah.
He loves like the visual creativity ones, and so we kind of go back and forth, and like we'll do one. I'm like, it kind of lost me there. But it's opened up like a whole nother line of communication for us too. And I feel like it's not only made us better as like individuals, it's made us stronger together because it's one more thing that we have in common. And so we've made it kind of like a thing now where we try different ones and we see like, oh no, I didn't like that one or whatever. So we have kind of swapped like the stereotypical, the recommended morning routine for an evening routine. Because a lot of people, that's when they snack. That's when they just sit on the couch. They've given up on the day. They, watch Netflix, they chill, they eat potato chips, whatever. We've implemented these healthy activities, and we've dedicated the evenings to ourselves and to each other.
I so love that. Like, I love that. Oh my gosh. Like, I am not a morning person. I've been saying for a long time, I want to be the 5 a.m. mama, get up. Well, maybe 6. 6 sounds better, but and it just hasn't, it just isn't something I've done and stuck to. And I love this idea of the night routine. It doesn't have to be the morning.
Mm-mm.
It can be the night routine. So I so love that. And I love this. And I'm going to challenge our listeners right now, not really challenge, but ask you to really sit down and take a look at writing down those 50 things that bring you joy.
Mm-hmm.
Sit down and do it. And if and allow yourself the time and the openness and space to be open to that and do that. And if you get stuck, that's okay. Come back to it. I'm in the process of writing 250 goals for 2020, something that Kayla has asked us to do in the Millionaire Society. And I don't have 250 yet, and I'm okay, but I'm keeping track of it on my phone. So as things pop up, so don't make it a hard task, but make it fun and enjoyable in that process.
Totally.
But I love that so much. I was over here taking notes like crazy. Oh my goodness. I could sit here and talk to you all day long. Like
I got all day.
I love this. Oh my goodness.
I know. Every time I talk to you, I love it. Like you come across, these people, and that's why I say, on social media and on my podcast and stuff, like you have to take a leap sometimes and invest in yourself. Like you just have to do it. Because this is what happens. Like if you and I were not in Arizona together at an event, like this connection would never have happened. And it's so magical. And you just meet some people in your life where you're like you're meant to be in my life. And I love it. Going back to that list of 50 for a second, it took me like 2 weeks to come up with 50 things. And when I finally went back, so when I first started my medication the second time around, I was in very close contact with my doctor. Like I went in every week. And so it took me 2 weeks to turn in this list. And he was floored that it only took me 2 weeks. He's like, most people don't even, when they finally hand it in, he's like, they've got like 20. And I was like, well, I had to ask for help. Like I remember asking my mom and my husband, like, what makes me happy?
That would so be me too. I usually go to my husband, you know me better than me most of the time. So what is it that makes me happy? And oh my goodness, that's awesome. That's so funny. And I'm just over here with chills and goosebumps, like the whole deal. Like I love having conversation with you. We're definitely going to be doing this again because we just have so much to share. You are going to change and already are changing so many lives. You are such a bright light in this world. I am so grateful for you. And like you said, investing in yourself, go do it because this is the magic that happens. You never know what will happen at that event. For me, and probably for you too, my DNA was changed at that event. I cannot go back to the woman I was before that event. And then you might meet people like this where there is just this magic that happens. That is it can be rare. you know, and unless you're putting yourself out there, you're not going to find that, you know?
Yeah, totally. But I feel like you also, like, when you go to an event or you join, you know, a program like mine or whatever, you have to be able to, you have to be willing to change,
Yes.
and you have to be willing to put in the work and take messy action, and you have to be present. In actually the welcome video of my program of Tight and Toned, I always say, like, you get out of this, and this goes for anything, any event, any program, any like friendship, whatever. You get out of this what you put in. So if you are not open and honest, willing to change, show up consistently, then you're not going to get whatever results that you are striving for, whatever it may be. Like, you have to, whatever you learned at that, you know, event, you have to be willing to take those tips and tricks and action steps that all those amazing speakers spoke about and put them into action, because otherwise nothing is ever going to change. And so you really deep down have to want change to begin with.
Yeah, you do. You absolutely do. And I've been to events where I went home and I didn't do anything.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, I changed a little bit, but that when you put the action in, when you do the work, that's when the magic happens. And like you said, messy. It doesn't matter what it looks like, just doing it. And sometimes that is probably one of the, at least initially, the biggest lessons that you can learn is that putting in that action, you're going to get something back.
Mm-hmm.
You will change. You're a guaranteed change when you do that. So thank you so much, Kathie, for joining me this morning, sharing your story. That is just so powerful. You are such a beautiful person, and I am so, so grateful for you. I am so glad that we went to that event, we met, we're sharing life together now, sharing our journeys together, and, you know, hopefully changing somebody's life in doing so. Do you
Well,
have do you have anything that is just burning on your heart that you want to share before we go?
I just want to say, like, you're not, if whoever's listening and if they're going through whatever it may be, you know, they feel like they're alone in this world, they're going through postpartum depression, maybe they just had a baby and they're like overwhelmed or whatever it may be, like, reach out to me, and I'm going to say you because I know that you have a heart of gold and that you are like more than willing to lift up anybody who's struggling, but just reach out. Like, it doesn't, if you feel like you're not surrounded by, you know, family or friends or whatever who support you, I've been there. One of my best friends, we're not friends anymore for a reason. One of my best friends back in the day was like the most unsupportive person. Like, I remember my husband and I trained so hard for a Spartan race. It was her birthday. We were running the race the next day, and I was like, I'm not drinking tonight. I'm going to eat well. Like, I want to fuel my body. And she's like, oh, come on, Kathie, like, have some wine. And like, just was so unsupportive. And I was like, this is like my best friend. So just know that you're not alone. We've all been there. And if you feel like you are that person that doesn't have any support from your loved ones or the people that mean the most to you, then reach out to somebody who you know, it could be a stranger, but who you know is going to like love on you and support you and check in with you or whatever it may be. Like, I will be that person for you. I love getting messages from people who are like, you know, I'm going through this and I just listened to your podcast or whatever it may be. Like, this is what I'm going through. What can I do? I will give you all the love and support and tips that you need. Like, I always make time for that. So just reach out, know that you are loved. You're not alone, even though it may feel like it. And, like, really, you can do anything that you want. You just have to be willing to change and take messy action and do it regardless of what you fear.
Yes. So tell us, where can we find you?
I am on mostly Instagram. I do have Facebook. You can find me there at Kathie Vandermeer, but I'm all about Instagram stories. I love them. So you can find me just at Kathie Vandermeer. It's my name. I'm sure it'll all be in your show notes.
Yes.
And then my Tighten Toned program, which I have to plug because it just changes so many lives and I'm so obsessed with it. I only do enrollment every 3 months, so it's only open 4 times a year. And it's coming in, I don't know when this is going to air, but it's opening up in January. So if you head over to my website, KathieVandermeer.com, and then just click on program on the menu button, you'll find all the information there. You can get on the wait list so you don't miss out. It's just such an incredible, life-changing program. I actually interviewed 2 of our members, and they said that they came in for weight loss and they have now found like lasting friendships, and they're just so grateful for the program. So if you feel like you need something like that, then I invite you to come join us, and I promise it will be the best thing you ever did.
I love that. Yes, definitely go check out Kathie on Instagram. Go check out her program, enrollment opening in January. Thank you so much for being here with me. I enjoyed this conversation, and I cannot wait to do this again. We will find a way. We will definitely do that.
Yay!
Hi, friends. If you enjoyed this episode of the Just As We Are podcast, it would mean so much to me if you would head on over to iTunes and leave me a 5-star review. Take a screenshot of today's episode and tag me at Katrina Lelly on your social media. If you haven't already, head on over to the Just As We Are podcast community on Facebook and hit join, where you will get to join more of the Just As We Are tribe. And remember that no matter where you are on your journey, you are completely whole and loved just as you are.